Hey, this is Ragnon, and this is my guide for Mythic Plus Restoration Druid in Season 2 of The War Within. I apologize in advance, this is probably going to be unedited, and I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. I am not going to have the time to edit it right now, because we're moving houses and stuff, and I've got a lot going on, so I'll try to keep it short though. First of all, Resto Druid. Why would you want to play Resto Druid? What are the pros? What are the cons? The pros are that you have a very strong toolkit for healing a small group of people by being able to lather on your heals based on how your mastery works. It's really strong for planned damage events where you have time to prepare and you know that they're coming, or for constant ticking rot damage in a fight. The places where Restoration Druid can struggle is with big bursts of sudden, unpredictable damage, like missed kicks or something like that. It does have more tools than it's had in some past iterations for dealing with that kind of unpredictable burst damage, but it is still a weak point. Let's talk quickly about gear. Haste is king. Your haste is your biggest priority. It increases the speed at which your heals tick, helps you to be able to apply things more quickly to your group. Haste is good. Mastery is second priority. Mastery, the way that it functions for Restoration Druid is that for each heal that you have on a target, it's going to increase the healing from all of your other heals after that. So I'm going to refer to mastery as mastery stacks. So for example, if we have a rejuvenation, that is one mastery stack. So if I then apply regrowth, now I have two mastery stacks. So all of my healing is increased by, let's do an easier number, let's round down and let's say 20%. So if I have two mastery stacks, I am now taking 40% additional healing from both of those spells. It applies to all of your other healing. Now, that's not entirely correct because there is a diminishing return effect. So the more heals that you have on a target, the less powerful that is. But just know that the more heals that you have on a target, it is increasing the healing from all of those heals. So really good for a 5-man environment where you can just layer heals upon themselves. Crit and Verse are lower priority. Crit just increases the chance for your heals to critically hit, and Verse just has a flat increase and is not as valuable as the other two. Embellishments. So I'm running Dark Moon Sigil Ascendance and Writhing Armorband. This is mostly prioritized for raid. There are other things you can... gear in general, I would recommend that you check Wowhead and other resources like that, Archon, Murloc, see what people are doing, because video guides can quickly become out of date. So I'm not going to focus as much on gear. I would just check those resources. For trinkets, Mr. Pick Me Up is currently the highest and strongest healing one. You get this from Sprocket Monger in Raid. And then for secondary trinket, there's a couple options. They're all tuned pretty similarly for dungeons. House of Cards is just one I got from the vault, but other good options are Mugs, Moxie Jug, the one from Rick, the Reverb Radio, or from Mythic Plus you can farm the Priory of the Sacred Flame trinket, and then there's also the one, the candle one, Blaziken's Wax from a Dark Flame Cleft. Those are all tuned very similarly for your second trinket. Okay, let's talk about healing talents. So I'm going to approach this slightly different than I have in the past. I'm a teacher in real life, and one teaching technique is called scaffolding. Scaffolding is where you introduce things at the most basic level, and then you build upon that one stage at a time. So I'm going to approach our talents in that way too. So this is going to be split over 3 different types of builds. This first one is, I'm calling this the stage 1 build. This is a ranged focus build. It's completely stripped of damage dealing talents, and instead it just focuses on helping you to develop your good habits and learning the core healing kit of Druid. This is also good for learning the dungeon pool, because while you're learning damage events and stuff, it's a good idea to have extra hots out than you might normally have once you understand how the damage patterns look. That way you're ready to quickly respond to damage as it happens. So this build runs things like Germination, runs Master Shapeshifter, so you can get your mana back because you're going to be a little inefficient on your mana, stuff like that. So that's the first step, and then we'll talk about the ranged build and the cat waving build after that. They're both viable, yeah, they're after stage 1. So, healing rotation. First of all, when you first get into a key, the most important thing to do is apply your buff. Apply Mark of the Wild to your party, and then we have a new buff called Symbiotic Relationship. This is just, it takes your self-healing that you normally get through your Ysera thing and duplicates it to another party member. It's not a ton of healing, but it's free, so I usually just throw this on the tank, or if there's a DPS that I'm worried about, I throw it on them. Your maintenance healing. So there's the big 3. There's 3 things that you must have at all times, and that is your Lifebloom, or Lifeblooms in this case, your Efflo, and then your Cen Ward. Those are the 3 big, that's the triad, the trinity of your maintenance healing stuff. So when you first get into a pool, you want to make sure that you have your Lifebloom on 2 targets, which we'll talk about how to choose which 2 targets those are in a second, and then make sure your Efflo is down, and then put your Cen Ward on somebody. There are a lot of synergies in the talents here. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to talk about what you should do, and then if you want to do a deep read on your own and try to see all the different synergies, then please do. It helps you understand the class more, but I'm not going to... I tried doing that already, and the video ended up being an hour long, so not going to do that. Lifebloom, the way that you select who that's going to be on, if you don't know, just throw it on the tank and yourself. What I typically do is I use the first pull or 2 of a dungeon to kind of gauge whether I trust the tank or not when I'm pugging. If I feel like I can trust the tank, honestly, the tank should not need Lifebloom. Most tanks are very self-sufficient for the most part and just need a little bit of intervention from you. So if that's the case, then I would recommend throwing Lifebloom on yourself and one of the DPS. What that's going to do is it's going to have 2 players who are very safe now, because Lifebloom has a lot of synergies. It counts for 3 stacks of mastery. It's going to be blooming periodically, giving them extra heals. Your regrowths are going to be duplicated onto lots of good stuff. So your 2 people with Lifebloom need less attention than the rest of the party. Then your Cen Ward, I typically throw that on another DPS. And now it's there's only 1 squishy member of the group that's left that needs priority healing. Everybody else has tools on them to help them survive. So that's how I typically like to keep those maintenance heals up. Alright, beyond those maintenance heals, so you got your 2 Lifeblooms, you got your Cen Ward, you got your Efflo. The next thing that you need to understand is Soul of the Forest. Soul of the Forest is a proc that after you cast your Swiftmend, it's going to make your next heal super powered. So it applies to either your Regrowth, your Rejuv, or your Wild Growth. In most situations, I use this with Wild Growth. So let's say that I Swiftmend myself real quick, and I've got my Soul of the Forest proc. If I use Wild Growth applies to everybody. It's a short heal over time that's front loaded, so the first couple ticks are much stronger than the last couple ticks. And because it's super powered, it's increased by 50% from the Soul of the Forest. So if there's ticking AoE damage that you have to worry about, Wild Growth is the way that I usually approach that. The second use case is if you Swiftmend into a Regrowth, that makes your Regrowth hit much harder. It becomes a very, very strong spot heal. So if there's one person who needs a big spot heal, then I use it with Regrowth. The third use case is you can Swiftmend into a Rejuv. I typically only really do that if there's somebody with like a dot that they would benefit more from having a longer strong hot than a big burst of healing if they're already high health or something. Or I use it if I don't know what, there's not very much damage and I don't know what to do, so I just throw an empowered Rejuv on the tank. So those are the 3 use cases that I recommend for Soul of the Forest. So again, step 1, maintenance heals. You got your Lifebloom, Cen Ward, and your Efflo. That's your big 3. Then you respond to any maintenance healing with one of those 3 ways of using Soul of the Forest that I talked about. And then beyond that, you want to Regrowth. Regrowth is a much higher priority than it is in Raid. You'll have them free pretty often because of your Lifeblooms with its clear casting. You want to prioritize the people that don't have your Lifeblooms because your Regrowths will be transferred, the hot will be transferred to those targets with Lifebloom as well because of this talent right here, Rampant Growth. And then beyond just spot healing with Regrowths, then you can use Rejuvenation to help make sure that the group has hots on them so they have an extra stack of mastery and they're ready to be Swiftmended if they take a sudden chunk of damage. While you're playing this build, this Mythic Plus Stage 1 build, chances are you might not know the damage patterns very well of the dungeon pool yet. So I would put your maintenance healing out, and then I would just keep 1 or 2 Rejuv stacks on everybody, just so that there's extra healing going out, and you're able to quickly respond to things. You'll know that you're ready to move on from this build when you're bored and you're just putting Rejuvs out because you have nothing else to do. That time frame is when in other builds you're going to spend attacking and dealing damage. Or if you're having mana problems because of so much Rejuv spam, then you might hit a moment where you have time to start spamming Wrath because of Master Shapeshifter right here. You'll get mana back. And so when you hit that point where you're starting to now try to get mana back by attacking, you're ready to move on to the next build. Which, speaking of which, let's talk about the ranged build. So once you're comfortable with your healing kit, you're bored, and you have extra time, and you're ready to start contributing damage as well as the rest of your utility, you're ready for the ranged build. This adds back in the damage talents here on the Moonkin side of things. It also adds in Heart of the Wild and Call of the Elder Druid. These are our biggest ways of dealing damage. It's a huge buff. Let's talk about what it is real quick. So Heart of the Wild is a 5-minute cooldown, and it strengthens your off-spec things. In this case, balance spells. The cast time of your balance spells are reduced by 30%, and they also deal 20% increased damage. So it's a big damage amp. Also, the build that I'm posting here uses Dream of Cenarius. What this does is it makes it so that your, we'll call them your hard cast spells, your Wrath and your Starfire, they're going to turn the damage that they deal into healing, and this effect is increased by 200% while you have that Heart of the Wild buff. So what this means is that during Heart of the Wild, you're essentially a Disc Priest, and you can handle all kinds of minor to moderate healing requirements just by attacking. So this is a lot of fun. While you're in Heart of the Wild, you can just focus on damage dealing and you don't really have to worry about your group. I don't trust this enough to do this during like big planned damage events on boss encounters, so this is mostly I ignore healing and attack during trash packs and stuff, but there are moments where this is not enough healing. So you're not totally a Disc Priest. Call of the Elder Druid gives you a proc of the Heart of the Wild buff once every minute, and you proc it by casting, in this case, you cast Star Surge, and that will trigger it. For cat form, it's one of your single target things. It's either Rake or Shred. And that's going to give you the buff for a quick little 15 seconds. So let's talk about how to now utilize damage in the this build. Your healing rotation and priority is all exactly the same as the previous build. Now when you enter a pack though, you want to, while the tank is gathering things up, you want to cast Moonfire on as many targets as possible. It's not important that you get it on every single target because your Treants, your Grove Guardians, are going to periodically cast Moonfire because we're playing Keeper of the Grove. There's a talent here where they cast it once every about 6 seconds or so. So you don't have to get it on everybody. Then when the pull is grouped up, you want to go ahead and press Sunfire so that you apply it to everybody with as few globals as possible, ideally 1. Then you're going to proc Star Surge. You're going to cast Star Surge to proc your Heart of the Wild, and that's stage 1. We're not going to spend any time attacking with Starfire or Wrath or anything like that. All we're going to do is get our dots out and then empower the amount of damage that they deal. They'll deal 20% more damage just by pressing 1 Star Surge. That's stage 1 of damage dealing, so I'll show you what that looks like. So Here I get my maintenance heals out as we're running in. Cen Ward, I'm going to throw down an Efflo. Tank is gathering these up. I'm going to go ahead and apply my Moonfires. We'll do 3 here just to prove a point. And then we're going to press Star Surge. Okay, and now we're ready to go back into healing. Making sure that the group is staying topped up. And you can see we're already contributing with just our dots, which is pretty cool. So that is stage 1 of learning how to damage deal, and so you want to practice doing that until it gets to a point where it's not interfering with your healing, and you can seamlessly do that at the beginning of each pull and stuff. Okay, the next stage to go into full-fledged ranged DPS mode. You want to start pulls the exact same way. You dot everything up, apply your Sunfire, and then Star Surge to proc your call of your Heart of the Wild. Or if it's a longer encounter or a boss fight, or you think you can get full value from the full duration, you can cast Heart of the Wild. I usually save this for boss encounters just to make it safe, or like, you know, big lust pulls or something. And then as soon as your Heart of the Wild is ticking, then you want to go ahead and begin casting. If it's single target, you cast Wrath. If it's 2 or more targets, you cast Starfire. You do not need to ever hard cast Moonkin form. You don't ever need to press it to go in or out of Moonkin form. And that's actually going to naturally happen on its own because of this talent right here, Fluid form. So whenever you cast Wrath or Starfire, it's going to shift you into Moonkin form. And then whenever you start healing, it's going to get you out of Moonkin form. So you never actually have to push the button, which is pretty cool. So I'll show you what that looks like. So going into this pull, I'm going to make sure my maintenance heals are up. I'm going to Moonfire a bunch, Sunfire, Star Surge to proc all of the Mark of the... whatever it's called. Heart of the Wild. A lot of similar named abilities for Druid. Heart of the Wild, and then I'm going to start spamming Starfire to deal damage. I can optionally use an offensive Convoke at that point, since I'm in Moonkin form. You want to make sure that you are in Moonkin form before you start casting that, otherwise you're going to be healing. So let's pretend this is a big pull. We're just going to pull a bunch of stuff. Moonfire, Moonfire, Moonfire. Okay, I'm done applying Moonfire. I'm going to spam out my Grove Guardians here. Do a Sunfire, Star Surge, Starfire, and we're just spamming now. And I'm going to go ahead and Convoke. I'm in Moonkin form. I'm just going to use my Convoke here. Keep spamming Starfire. Reapply my Sunfire because it's not on that pack right there. There's some here that don't have Sunfire. I'm going to go ahead and reapply there. Put out a Grove Guardian just to make sure that there's some healing, and use its Moonfires. Attack, 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 attack. I'm out of Heart of the Wild, so now I should go back into reapplying my maintenance healing, get my Lifeblooms, get Cen Ward, healing up these other 2 targets with Regrowths. They're good, so now I'm going to go back and reapply my dots. And I can attack until there's some healing that's needing to be done. Oh, this guy has a big bleed on him. Let's imagine that I want to use my Lifebloom on him instead. So that's essentially it. And then you can see right here my healing. The large majority of it was Dream of Cenarius. So just by attacking and stuff, I didn't have to really look at the health bars at all during the time of Heart of the Wild. So that's a pretty cool way to play the build. If you don't like it, if you don't like to attack, you can take this talent off and instead just run Germination and play it more similarly like the first build, where you're not relying on the damage to heal. That is a popular option. Okay, that is Moonkin. Let's talk about cat weaving. So this is arguably the most difficult of the types of builds. But once you get it, it is a very satisfying way to play. So what this does is it drops all the Moonkin stuff, all of your spell casting, and instead focuses on physical damage by taking all of the cat talents, and then switches this talent here to Circle of the Wild. It does still take the damage dealing talents like Call of the Elder Druid and Heart of the Wild, Dream of Cenarius. The way that Wildstalker is different is instead of empowering your Grove Guardians, now your Grove Guardians are just normal. They don't empower your healing. They're still worth pressing, but they don't have as much synergy as they did before. They don't cast Moonfire. Now you have an additional bleed effect that's applied by your bleeds periodically, and then you have an additional heal that's applied by wild growth, regrowth, and Efflo, called symbiotic blooms. So what this does is it gives you extra just normal healing to muscle through your way through things without relying on cooldowns like your Grove Guardians and stuff. The nice thing about this playstyle compared to the ranged playstyle is that doing cat form stuff does not take up any mana, so you can drop Master Shapeshifter comfortably and instead bring Liveliness, which makes your damage over time effects deal tick 25% faster, and your hots heal 5% faster. So that's a lot of extra throughput, both on your healing and your damage. So you don't need the extra mana regen from Master Shapeshifter like you did with ranged casting. Also, you're positioned better in melee, so you're in a position to better be prepared to kick and to use in-cap roar. Almost everything that you're doing, you can move while you're doing. Unlike casting, when you're standing in Moonkin form and you're channeling, you're casting Starfires and there's just a swirly under your feet and you have to keep canceling your casts because you're moving. That can get really annoying. Whereas cat form, almost everything that you do, you can do while you're moving. So you can be applying all your bleeds, you get out, you reapply your Lifeblooms, your Efflo, your Cen Ward, you're putting out Rejuvs. The only things that you need to stand still to do is to cast your Wild Growth, your Regrowths, and obviously to channel Tranquility. So those are the only things that you really need to be stationary for. The rest you can be watching your feet and be mobile, which is pretty cool. The way that the healing works, it's going to be the exact same for Wildstalker as it was for the other specs, just less of a focus on Rejuv because you want to be efficient with your globals to go back and forth between cat form and humanoid form to heal. So Rejuv is much less of a priority. It already was a low priority, but now it's even more so. Damage dealing, as soon as you enter a pull, whenever possible you want to be in stealth. The reason for that is because your rake, your primary bleed that you're going to be applying to as many targets as possible, your first one when you exit stealth is going to deal 60% increased damage. It will also stun for 4 seconds. And then also, because of this talent right here, you'll gain an additional crit chance, 8% crit chance on a lot of your abilities. And also 8% extra crit chance to heal with your regrowths. Or your periodic heals, excuse me. By casting Regrowth. So you want to do stealth whenever you can. Sometimes the tank doesn't let you, they keep chain pulling, and so if that happens, it's not the end of the world, it's okay. But what you'll do to enter a pull is you'll go in with maintenance healings as long as it's not messing up your stealth. Then you go ahead and rake. After you rake, you come out of stealth and you reapply all of your maintenance heals that are missing. Then you go back into cat and you apply rake to as many targets as possible. Thrash is like the equivalent of your Sunfire. You want to use that when the pull is grouped up so that you can apply that bleed to the whole pack. Anytime you hit 4 or 5 energy, you want to go ahead and use Rip, which is your big consumer. You use that to apply a big bleed to a single target. And then you keep repeating that until you're low on energy. When you're low on energy, that's when I typically offensively convoke. And because we're running Dream of Cenarius, that will transfer into a lot of healing. Sorry, my daughters are asking me a question. In cat form, the spells that turn your damage into healing are Shred, and that's it. Swipe does as well. You don't typically cast Swipe though, or I don't at least. And so when you cast Convoke, you want to ideally have as many bleeds out as possible so that most of your casts are like Shred, so that it's dealing more damage and it's also turning that damage into healing. You can optionally also be a little lazy, and when you go in, you can just open with a Convoke, and that'll apply a bunch of bleeds, and that can get you out and ready to heal again more quickly. So if you know the damage is going to happen quickly and you don't have time to do all of that bleed application stuff, then that's a way that you can do that. But anytime you're low on energy, you go out of cat form and you reapply your maintenance hots first, and then any spot healing that needs to be done, and then you go back into cat form, attack again. When you're low on energy, come out, reapply your hots. As your energy comes back, you go back in cat form, and it's just a weaving back and forth, and it takes practice to get used to, but the goal is to simultaneously have your bleeds ticking on the enemies while keeping up the necessary hots up on your group, and only the necessary hots up on your group, and then spending any extra time that you have doing like shred and ferocious bite, but that's secondary to all your bleeds. Okay, so let me show you an example here. We'll go into this pull. I'm gonna get out Cen Ward. That's a 30-second cooldown, so I know that one's gonna last a long time. Lifebloom, Lifebloom, tank's pulling. I'm gonna go ahead and stealth, and we're gonna rake. That applies our Heart of the Wild. Thrash, I'm gonna rip. I'm gonna put down Efflo, go back into cat form, and convoke. There's a rip because I was maxed on energy. I'm gonna keep attacking. Let's say there's healing that needs to be done. I'm going to get out, regrowth, reapply my hots, and now I'm ready to go back in. I'm full energy. I would rip there, and so on. You just go back and forth, keeping your rake and your thrash up on as many targets as possible. And anytime you hit full energy, you want to ideally use rip on a target that does not already have a rip. And then if you're on like a boss fight and they already have all of your bleeds and everything and you still want to do damage, then you can shred and ferocious bite. But that's the basic gist of cat weaving. I'm going to try to quickly think of anything that I might have missed. I apologize if I repeat myself. This is like my 4th time trying to record because my first time was long-winded and then my computer crashed and whatever. So cooldowns, your convoke, you can use that to heal, and the way that you want to use it to heal is you want to make sure that you have as many hots applied on the group first as possible. So I would make sure that I have my maintenance hots, for example, have Efflo down, go ahead and do like an empowered wild growth, and then convoke. And what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that the majority of your heals are things like regrowths, which are going to hit pretty hard because of the amount of other hots that you have with your mastery. And so on. If you use it without any hots up, it's going to spend a lot of the casts on weak spells like Rejuv and stuff, and you don't want it to do that. You can cast Convoke while you're in cat form or moonkin form, and then if there's healing that needs to be done, you can actually cancel out of your form, and it will continue to cast Convoke, and the rest of the spells will prioritize healing spells, but you can't do the reverse. You can't start accidentally in human form and then say, oh, I meant to do this in cat, I want to do damage. If you shift into cat, you're going to cancel it. Same thing with shifting into moonkin. You can only shift out. Your Tranquility, if you use it by itself with no hots up, it might not be enough healing to make it through the damage event, depending on the difficulty of the key and the difficulty of the damage. So what I typically would recommend is doing a ramp leading into Tranquility. So you'd have your maintenance hots up, make sure your Efflo's down, and then I would at minimum do like a Swiftmend into a wild growth and then Trank. But if you wanted, you could spend extra time leading up to that by applying Rejuves. Again, time plus mana for Druid equals unlimited healing. It's when you are missing one of those components that you can't heal. If you get caught quickly by damage and you didn't have time to prepare, then you might not have enough healing. If you don't have enough mana to maintain all of those extra heals and stuff like that, then you also can be in trouble. Trying to think of any last things. I think I talked about this, but in case I didn't, your Nature's Swiftness empowers all of your regrowths cast by your Convoke, so you want to have those macroed together. I also have my Nature's Vigil macroed with Convoke. It gets desynced because it's on a 1.5 minute cooldown, and Convoke's only a 1 minute cooldown. So it only works for every other Convoke that I cast, but that makes it so that when I defensively Convoke and I'm healing, it will still deal damage from Nature's Vigil. There's probably something I'm missing. If there is, I'll hit it in the comments. If you have any questions for me, please hit me up in the comments, or you can feel free to join my community Discord that I have linked in the description. I check both of those very frequently, all the time, and I love being able to be helpful and useful and help people along their journey. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy healing with this beautiful class that is Resto Druid in The War Within Season 2. See you later.